So on this week's episode, we're talking about the Resident Evil series. Now, I was kind of torn on what genre to put this one in, but ultimately I decided that it fits best in the sci-fi timelines. And I know a lot of you guys out there are going to be thinking, well, this probably belongs in horror timelines. It's definitely more of a horror series, but I kind of disagree with that because I think that on this week's episode of Horror Timelines, we're talking about the Resident Evil series. Now, I know a lot of you out there are probably thinking, well, this is more of an action series than a horror series, so I don't really think it belongs there. But I don't really have an action series, so I think we're covered. The first film in the series was released in 2002, and it had little to do with the video game that it was based on. It started with a virus being released and locked down in an underground lab, and a security team who goes in to discover what happened. Along for the ride is Alice, who has amnesia, and police officer Matt. We get all the elements of the series, starting with the Umbrella Corporation, zombies, the now infamous laser grid hallway, which took more than a little inspiration from Cube, the Red Queen computer hologram, more zombies, the liquor, monster dogs, and kung fu. V for Vendetta gets munched, Michelle Rodriguez gets killed, but comes back to life, which wouldn't be the last time as we see in the Fast and Furious movies. Alice wins the boss battle, and Matt starts to change into Nemesis to prep us for the sequel, and Alice is taken away. She wakes up, is experimented on, and features a stylish hairdo, and walks out into the destroyed streets where we finally get our timeline. Not only does it pay tribute to the Dead Walk headline from Day of the Dead, but it gives us the date as September 24th, 2002, so the movie takes place in the same year that it was released in. And anyway, that's where it leaves us. Alice is in Raccoon City ready to fight more zombies. And she picks up the fight 2 years later in 2004 with the release of Resident Evil Apocalypse. Everything in the opening 10 minutes or so takes place in between Alice being captured and waking up at the ending of the last movie, including introducing game character Jill Valentine, Master of Unlocking. It then picks up right where the first one left off, so we're still in 2002, and then introduces Carlos Oliveira and Scott Farkas. So help me God, yellow eyes. The liquors return, and Nemesis revealed, and Alice is becoming more than human. Zombie kids show up, zombie dogs return, and Ralphie up Zach Ward, and everything leads up to a final battle between Alice and Nemesis, which sees him getting crushed by a helicopter. The corporate villain gets eaten, and Raccoon City gets destroyed by a bomb. Although it appears that Alice is killed in the explosion, we're treated to a finale in which she's reborn in a lab, introducing a new Umbrella villain who looks like a Mormont, and it's revealed that Alice has new powers and is apparently under their control. The next chapter came out in 2007 with Resident Evil Extinction, which starts off a lot like the beginning of the first film, with Alice waking up again. But then she gets killed, revealing her to be a clone, one of many. We also quickly learn that the zombie outbreak has spread and zombies are everywhere. We're told in the narration that weeks and months have passed, and we get more zombie dogs. Game fans get the introduction of big villain Wesker, and then we see that Carlos and LJ have survived and are joined by newcomers including Ali Larter's Claire Redfield. LJ becomes that character that has to be in every damn zombie movie that gets bitten and yet doesn't bother to tell anyone, and hello, Aunt Alicia. A new problem arises with zombie birds, but Alice can make force fields and is telekinetic now. Just go with it. We get a flash of a book tracking radio signals, and we get some dates here with listings marked as 539, indicating that we're at least in 09, so it's been more than 7 years since the last one. There's a bit of discrepancy here as Alice makes a comment about the desert taking 5 years to put into sand back into Las Vegas, and promotional material seems to indicate that this is 5 years later, so it's possible that this could also be 2007 based on the conflicting info that we're given here. Anyway, there's new super zombies that are fast, and Doc Isaacs gets bitten and then mutates while Carlos goes out in a blaze of glory. We're introduced to the White Queen computer hologram, and Alice confronts a clone, and now I feel totally justified that this is in sci-fi timelines. There's a final showdown with the Isaac Tyrant that ends with some laser grid action, and all ends up with Alice preparing to activate an army of her own clones. 3 years later, in 2010, we get Resident Evil Afterlight, which kicks off in Japan with a flashback to before the initial outbreak. There's a visible billboard that says 2009 Christmas back here, but that would be after global extinction, so we could just write that up as a mistake. It gets confusing as it then says 4 years later, but we're not told if it's 4 years later since the initial outbreak in Japan, or 4 years since the end of the last film, where we meet a recast Wesker and Super Alice using mind bullets to destroy everyone and everything. See? Sci-Fi. She's not alone though, as all of the Alice clones are also here, but all of them get blown up, leaving only original Alice alive. I mean, I guess we assume it's original Alice. You can tell, really. She gets her powers removed and crashes, and then we cut to 6 months later, and we can see from the video screen that it's May 3rd. And she's searching for Claire and the others, and when she finds Claire, she tells her that they met 18 months ago, so that defines the 4 years thing, making that 4 years since the outbreak in Japan. And it's only been a year and a half since the last film. Since it's May, 18 months would actually put it ahead 2 calendar years since the last one, which would then have taken place in November or December, and we're in 2009 or sometime after 2011, depending upon what year we're going with for Extinction. Anyway, they head to LA, and I can see my house from up here. Zombies with Cthulhu mouths show up, as does Chris Redfield from the original game, as does the Axeman, taken from a later game, and they blow up his head. It all wraps up on a boat with a final fight against zombie dogs because heaven forbid one of these movies didn't have them, and a T-virus enhanced Wesker, who is shot in the head and then blown up. It seems like a happy ending until squads of Umbrella soldiers show up along with a hard-to-recognize Joe Valentine. 2012 brought us the 5th chapter in the series, Resident Evil Retribution, which picks up right where the previous film left off, and everyone except Alice is, I guess, presumed dead. It cuts to a while later, and Carlos is seemingly alive again, as is Rain, and the world seems normal, but it's all in her head. There's a huge VR Tokyo, except wait, the zombies are real. I'm sure there's some sort of scientific reason for that. Ada Wong, another game character, shows up, as does Leon Kennedy, and Wesker's still alive. So judging from the chain of events, this takes place later in the same year as the last one, so we're still in either 09 or 11 or so. It basically becomes a greatest hits entry as we get the return of the Red Queen. There's now 2 Axemen, more Alice clones, but then we get zombies to shoot guns, and holy cow, this guy's back. Lickers are back, and we just need some zombie dogs now. Alice frees Jill, and Wesker gives her back her powers and preps her to fight the Red Queen while we see a horde of zombies and flying creatures, but no damn dogs. It took 4 more years for us to get Resident Evil the final chapter, and it kicks off by throwing continuity out the window by claiming James Marcus created the T-virus to save his daughter instead of Dr. Ashford from Apocalypse. Isaac shows up again in a flashback, and Wesker's back, and the daughter's likeness becomes the Red Queen. Alice claims that the first movie's events happened 10 years ago, meaning that she's talking to us from 2012. It picks up with Alice in the ruins of DC, fighting one of those big flying suckers, and her new mission is to go back to the Hive in Raccoon City and find the antivirus that will fix everything, but she only has 48 hours, and Wesker's there. Oh, and she didn't get her powers back. That was a trick. The Red Queen repeats the 10 years ago thing, so we're definitely in 2012, which solidifies dates for the whole series. Since 4, 5, and 6 all take place within a short time of each other, and we know that Part 4 starts in May, we can assume that all 3 movies take place in 2012. The 18-month date that she gives us in that one tells us that Part 3 would take place in 2010, which confirms the signal dates as correct, and they were just older than we thought. That only leaves that 5-year comment, which can just be chalked up to Alice approximating. Isaac shows up, revealing that the guy Alice killed back in Extinction was just a clone, and then soon she shows up at the crater that used to be the city. Claire shows up and says that she was captured on a ship and has been here since, and time is running out for Snake to save the president. Alice to get the antivirus. Anyway, zombie dogs are back, yay! The Red Queen tells us that she's programmed to not harm a member of the Umbrella Corporation, so she can't stop Isaac's, and wait a minute. Wasn't everyone in the Hive in the first one an Umbrella employee? Yeah. There's a new creature apparently called a Bloodshot, and then the revelation that Alice is just a clone of James Marcus's daughter, and she's been a clone all along. And since the Red Queen is based on the same lady, they're all basically the same person. Old Alice fires Wesker, so the Red Queen is able to kill him, and then we get one grand hurrah with the laser hallway before Alice gets the antivirus, and Isaac is killed by his own clone before that one gets eaten, and old Alice blows up, while Alice uses the antivirus to kill all the zombies everywhere, and they all lived happily ever after. So the question becomes this: if Alice was a clone the entire time, who's to say that we were watching the same Alice the entire time? At the ending of the first movie, when Alice wakes up in the lab, is that the same Alice that we were watching before? At the ending of the second movie, when Alice seemingly dies in a helicopter, does she die, and is that a new clone at the ending of Part 2? When Alice wakes up again in Part 5, is that a different Alice than the one we had been watching previous? It really raises a lot of questions to actually how many Alices that we've seen this entire time. So there you have it, 6 movies that by the end of it all, actually from a timeline perspective, tie together pretty well, even if they don't from a continuity perspective. Things do kind of change from movie to movie, especially depending upon which cast member could or couldn't come back. But it holds up pretty well, I think, altogether. But that's about it for this week's episode of Sci-Fi Timelines, or Horror Timelines, or Action Timelines, really whatever one you want to go with. It pretty much all works. I'm cool with it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this one and what you want to see next. We've got a lot of movies coming up pretty soon. Feel free to like it, subscribe to me if you will, as well as I would appreciate that, and then share me on social media. Let people know. A lot of people in the comments will let me know that they really do think that I should have more subscribers and more people out there, and you guys can help. Share me out there for everyone to see and to find the videos, and we'll make sure that there's a lot more to come. So thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.